We think trials are this epic battle of facts, hard evidence, DNA, spreadsheets. But what if I told you the winner isn't the lawyer with the most facts, but the one with the best story? Today, we're diving into the art of legal persuasion to see how a powerful narrative can be the real difference between winning and losing. There's this wonderful story about a little boy watching a sculptor chip away at a huge block of stone. Day after day, he chips, and after weeks, this incredible, powerful lion emerges. The boy's just stunned, and he asks, "How did you know there was a lion in that rock?" That question, that's the entire key to winning a trial. Because a great lawyer isn't just making things up, they're revealing the truth that's already hidden inside this messy, confusing block of facts. And that's really our core idea here. The raw facts of a case, that's the block of granite. It's heavy, it's shapeless, it's totally overwhelming. You can't just dump all that on a jury and expect them to get it. It's the most compelling, the most coherent story that jurors will actually grab onto and use to make their final call. So if we're going to be sculptors, first we have to understand our material. And the material isn't just the evidence, it's the mind of the juror. We need to get a look at the psychological blueprint for how they actually think. This is so important to get. Jurors do not walk into a courtroom as blank slates, not at all. They bring a lifetime of experiences, beliefs, and biases with them. So as they're hearing all this evidence, they're not just passively listening. They are unconsciously filtering everything, arranging the pieces to build a story that makes sense to them, a story that fits their view of how the world works. They are active builders, not just empty vessels waiting to be filled. And you know what? There's a science to this. Socio-trial expert Professor Brandon Blankenship actually calls it the three-stage story model of jury reasoning. It works like this. First, as the evidence comes in, jurors build their own private story of what happened. Second, the judge tells them what the legal verdict options are. But stage 3 is the absolute kicker. They take the story they've already built in their head and just find the verdict that matches it. The story comes first. The verdict comes second. That changes everything. So the real job of a trial lawyer isn't to just argue a bunch of facts. It's to build a complete, compelling, easy-to-understand story that a juror can grab onto, adopt as their own, and carry into that deliberation room. You're basically handing them the finish line, so they don't have to guess what's hiding in the rock. Okay, so we have the blueprint of the juror's mind. Now let's pick up our first sculpting tool. In any sculpture, the first cut is the most important. And in a trial story, that first cut is this. Where do you begin? The answer is almost always with the defendant. Just look at the difference here. A weak story might start with the person who got hurt, the plaintiff. This is the story of a healthy young man. Right away, the focus is on him, what he was doing, what choices he made. But a strong story, it starts way earlier. This story began with a defendant's choice. See how that reframes the entire narrative? The problem didn't start at the moment of injury. It started long before that with a decision someone else made. The psychology behind this is just fascinating. For one, it helps avoid our natural tendency to kind of scrutinize the person who got hurt, but more importantly, it uses a cognitive shortcut called the availability heuristic. All that means is our brains tend to think whatever is easiest to remember is also the most important. By starting your story with the defendant's choices, you make their actions the most available, the most central issue of the whole trial. All right, next tool. We've made our first cut, now it's time for the fine details. And here, the number one rule of all storytelling is absolutely critical. Show, don't tell. If you just tell a jury a conclusion, they're going to get skeptical. But if you show them the evidence, you let them come to that conclusion all on their own. Okay, let's make this real. Imagine a medical malpractice case. Your whole goal is to prove a doctor cared more about making money than about their patient. How are you going to do that? Well, you could just get up there and tell them the doctor was greedy. But what's the jury's immediate gut reaction? They cross their arms and think, "Oh yeah, prove it." You've just given them something to argue with, not evidence to think about. Or you could show them. You just lay out the facts, one by one. You show them he more than doubled his daily patient load, from 40 to 100. You show them he stopped taking the time to personally discuss critical test results. You show them his office never, ever forgot to call and schedule that next yearly checkup, but somehow they did forget to follow up on that one critical life or death test result. You never have to say the word greed. The jury? They're already thinking it. And that is the secret sauce. A conclusion that a juror reaches on their own is a conclusion they will believe in, they will own, and they will fight for in that jury room.
You just gave them the pieces. They feel like they discovered the truth all by themselves.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe our most sophisticated tool, the finishing polish. It's called framing. Now, framing isn't about changing the facts one bit. It's about changing the context, the lens through which the jury sees those exact same facts. To see how powerful this is, think about this classic riddle. A young monk goes to his abbot and asks, "Father, may I smoke while I pray?" The abbot is horrified. Absolutely not. That's sacrilege. A little later, a second monk goes to the same abbot and asks, "Father, may I pray while I smoke?" And the abbot says, "Of course, my son. It is always good to pray."
You see, the action is exactly the same, smoking and praying at the same time. But the frame changes everything. One story is about disrespecting prayer. The other is about being devout. Same facts, completely different story. That right there is the power of a frame. So let's bring this back to the courtroom. Say you're in a hospital negligence case. The losing frame is to argue this hospital is a dangerous place. That immediately puts the jury on the defensive. Nobody wants to believe that. But the winning frame? This is a great hospital with incredibly high safety standards that this one person failed to live up to. So why is that second frame so much more powerful? As the legendary trial consultant Greg Cusimano explains, it works with what jurors already want to believe. It taps into something called confirmation bias, our natural tendency to favor information that confirms what we already think is true. Jurors want to believe their local hospital is safe, so the winning frame doesn't fight that belief, it reinforces it. It makes the verdict feel like a way to uphold the hospital's great standards by holding the one person who broke the rules accountable.
So after all that work, after we make that first cut with the defendant, show the fine details instead of just telling, and apply that final, perfect framing polish, what do we have? We have the finished sculpture, revealed from inside the stone.
In the end, a winning trial story is really just the art of finding that essential, persuasive truth that's buried deep inside a mountain of shapeless facts. And the only way you can do it is by using tools that work with, not against, how the human mind is already wired. So let's go back to our sculptor one last time. That giant pile of facts, that's the block of granite. The winning verdict you're after, that's the lion hidden inside. And your story, well, that's the chisel. That's how you reveal it. It is an incredibly powerful set of tools, but it does leave us with one last kind of provocative question to chew on. If, at the end of the day, justice really does depend on who tells the better story, what does that say about the nature of truth itself?